The length of ministry, Hinduism, the time was many generations. Over generations, the Hindu thought was formed. And in the end, there was a highly organized society. Today, the population is nearly 1 billion. Buddhism, Gautama Buddha began at the age of 35, and for 45 years, preached and taught and organized societies. And today, the population is actually much more than that. I just written a number. Judaism, Moses taught and led the children of Israel for 40 years. At the end, they had a very organized nation with armies. The population today is tens of millions. Islam, from the date of 610 CE, which is common era, same as AD, up to 632, 23 years, Muhammad had vision after vision and encounter after encounter with Angel Gabriel. And during that time, he organized those people where he lived into a huge fighting organization, which later on, within 100 years, swept the world and became the Ottoman Empire. It was not a small feat that he accomplished, but it took him 23 years to do that. Christianity, look at the number, 3.5 years. How long does it take to make a statement to the world? Have you tried it, given just 3.5 years? And that's not the point. The point he comes out last is, why was it only 3.5 years? Why not 20 or 30 or 40 like the others? And what is the answer? The answer reveals an extremely pathetic picture. He was rejected and booted out by his own community and sentenced to death. That is why it's only 3.5 years. On this point, he comes out last, completely last, as far as any of the founders is concerned. Only 3.5 years because he was kicked out. No other founder has that kind of a statement to his name. And yet some questions remain. If it's only 3.5 years, how come 2 billion people still call themselves by his name? The question remains. The circumstances of death. In Hinduism, the sages were honored at their death. Today, they are revered and held in high respect. In other words, it was an honorable ending to their lives. The people could look back and were happy, talked good things about the person who had just gone. In Buddhism, he died in Kusirana, surrounded by his disciples who strained to catch every one of his last words. The body was wrapped in 1,000 layers of the finest Banaras cloth and cremated. 1,000 layers of Banaras cloth. The Banaras cloth is the finest silk. And 1,000 layers means the highest honor you can possibly give the body. Islam, Umar, who was one of the top leaders next to Muhammad, he was dumbfounded and fell to the ground at the time of Muhammad's death because a great leader had gone. And so also the people who hurried ashen-faced to the mosque. And everywhere it was the time-honored thing of the women slapping their cheeks and beating their breasts because that's the way they mourned the death of an individual who was revered and honored and respected. Judaism, Moses was 120 years old when he died, and the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. 30 days, state mourning. Flag flying half-mast. The whole nation paralyzed. That is the way they showed respect for this great departed leader. Christianity, entirely different, the worst. With him were also crucified 2 robbers, one on his right and the other on his left, and he was numbered with the criminals. He died a criminal's death. The least honorable of them all. No other founder went to that kind of ending in his life. And therefore, at this point, you compare the founders, he comes out utterly last. Every other founder had a wonderful ending. Every other founder could look back at his life and say, what a life I have lived. Look at how much I have changed the landscape. Village after village has accepted my teachings, and the society itself has been changed because of my message. This person, nothing. When he finished, he was finished off as a criminal. Not only that, at the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? No religious tradition can ever be founded on a statement that he is forsaken of God. That's a hard way to end life and still try to make a religious movement. Why did the leaders want him crucified? You know, blasphemy according to the Jewish tradition, which is in their Torah, is punished by stoning to death. But they asked specifically that he be crucified because crucified is a form of hanging. And according to their own Torah, that's what it says, you shall surely bury him, the person who is punished by hanging, that very day, so that you do not defile the land, for he who is hanged is accursed of God. So that was the ultimate, clearest evidence to a Jew that you should never follow him because he has been cursed of God. And therefore, he was condemned and sentenced to death by the highest religious authority in his nation, the Sanhedrin. He was condemned and sentenced to death by the highest civil and judicial authority in the world at that time, which was Rome. And he was condemned and sentenced to death by the highest authority to the Jewish mind in the whole universe, that was Jehovah God himself. That's the ending of his life. Naturally, if you and I are searching and looking at this story as it unfolds and as it ends, some questions do arise, and they did arise in my own mind. And the questions are these: if he really died such a criminal's death, and he did, how come some of the greatest painters on earth have taken his themes and made some of the most beautiful paintings in the world today, in some of the most prestigious museums? How come some of the greatest sculptors have taken themes from this criminal's teachings? How come some of the greatest institutions of learning have started out in his name? Would you like to start out an institution and put a criminal's name on some of the central buildings? Difficult to imagine that, but there's a question. How come? How come people go out in his name? A criminal's name, half naked. Actually, the truth is, not half naked, completely naked. Everyone who was crucified completely naked. So, a naked criminal dangling on an instrument of torture, and you want to go out and talk about him and go out in his name? The fact is, I am from the East, and so I know that. My color is brown, and I see people sometimes, I've seen them, they're different color from me, they're fairer than me. They've come to my country, India. They don't live sometimes in the cities. They go out to the villages. Sit with those people there in the dust, in the mud, in the muck. Drink their dirty water, eat their dirty food, contract their diarrheal diseases, and sometimes die with their little babies also, right there out in those villages. I have seen it. And then sometimes they are buried in little mounds in the earth with little mounds of dirt over their bodies without even a name tag nearby. Naturally, I will ask the question, what in the name of anything causes them to do this? They've left their air-conditioned places here. They left all their family here and go out like that and die. Can anybody give me an explanation? Why point to a naked body hanging on an instrument of torture? Why not point to some business tycoon or some emperor or some king who can take care of your family after you are gone? Why point to this kind of a criminal? If he really was a criminal, if he really was finished off like we saw, and that's the truth of the matter, then can anyone explain why the whole human race of the Julian calendar has placed him at a pivotal position that has split the human history into two, BC and AD? Every time you write a letter, Every time you write a check, you put a date down there, and that date corresponds to this criminal's birth. Amazing questions came to me at that time. Why? Who put him there? 2,000 years. Was there nobody else with better credentials than this crucified criminal that you want to put him in the middle of all history and leave him there for 2,000 years, nobody even questioning whether he should be there or not? The only founder to die a violent, shameful criminal's death, last, obviously settled as last in the line of the founders. Are we timed? Let me go ahead for 5 minutes, and then we take a break. And so we look at the post-death. What happened after you died? In Hinduism, they would cremate the body. Mourning, they would scatter the ashes over and into the river Ganga or Ganges, which is the holiest river in India. It would signify a merger with the eternal. You put that in and let the ashes flow by, suggesting that the person has merged with the ultimate. And then they would make memorials and shrines. Buddhism, for some days they worshipped the relics of Gautama Buddha with utmost devotion, divided those relics into 8 parts. One they kept for themselves, the 7 others were handed over to 7 kings. They erected in their capital cities stupas or memorial mounds for the relics. That's what happened after the death. In Islam, Abu Bakr died. Abu Bakr was the next leader. And only 2 years it was succeeded by Umar and then Uthman. Finally, in 656, Ali became the 4th caliph. This was the caliphate, the golden years. In other words, after Muhammad died, there were other leaders who took over and the movement was carried on. Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab. After the death of Moses, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun. And so Moses went, Joshua came up, and then the movement still carried on. Christianity, he says, I am with you always. I am he who lives and was dead. Wow. Can you see the complete difference from any other founder? He says, yes, I was dead, but I am alive. Once again, I am asking that we keep the cap of inquiry on, not the cap of a believer, not the cap of a skeptic. The first inclination when I read that was, oh yeah, give me another one. Died and then rose again. Tell me who did that. Who can do that? And yet, it is written in the best attested ancient piece of literature in the world. There is no other literature that is more historical than this. It is not mythological, it's not legendary, so I'm stuck again. Can't believe and can't honestly throw it out. And so the only option in that point is to become an inquirer and make an honest inquiry. Because the meaning of what the people call his resurrection is a religious idea, it's a philosophical idea, but the resurrection itself is not religious. Whether or not it took place is not a religious question.